We are here to respond to this outside investigation reports that just came out last week. This investigation that further confirms that Phoenix police created fictional gang to falsely charge protesters and failed to investigate neo-Nazi language coin challenge that was created. This report is nothing new. It reiterates exactly what people have been saying for years, what Black and Brown community members have been telling city leaders for years. It is information that Kate Gallego and every single council member has known and constantly ignored these stories. So instead of listening to the extraordinary amount of evidence that people continue to present, the city decided to spend over $100,000 for this investigation to conduct this additional report. But even their own city investigation further highlights the culture of violence and corruption within this department and within policing. During this investigation, cops refused to participate. They withheld information and key documents and emails requested by the investigators that they withheld long enough to be purged due to the retention policy, right? All of these things were also further highlighted in this report. But these demands, right, are not new, and they're not new to the city. In 2018, we filed a class action lawsuit against the city of Phoenix because the huge amount of violence that police had on protesters that were protesting white supremacy. Since then, a lot of these same cops were involved and have continued to be involved and were involved in these arrests last year. These same cops that continue to act with impunity and without accountability, that continues to happen because the police contract and the Officer Bill of Rights continues to protect these cops. And so we're here because we heard what the city said, and when they gave us ridiculous recommendations that were in this report, but also false attempts to accountability. We're here as people, as organizations that have been saying this for a long time, to demand more and to share what the demands actually are. There's a lot of harm that has been created and a lot that the city has to do in order to start to amend or try to attempt to repair some of this harm. And so for today, we're going to hear from different organizations. We're going to hear from the People's Law Firm and Mass Liberation. But we're also going to hear, most importantly, from protesters that were brutalized and targeted last year. You'll hear because these charges, this corruption, this violence didn't stop and end then. It has continued, and people continue to be impacted by this. And we're here to call, honestly, on the bullshit of the city council and of Mayor Kate Gallego and of Chief Williams and the city manager, who have all been complicit, who have all been protecting this violence. And so with that, I'll pass it over. First, we also have Bill Murphy. I'll pass it over to Bill Murphy from Murphy, Falcon and Falcon.
Well, and I think Billy might still be trying to get in. So if you wouldn't mind, Vidi, I'll step in and kick us off. My name is Heather Hamill. I am a civil rights attorney at the People's Law Firm. Our law firm has been bringing multiple lawsuits against both the Phoenix Police Department and Maricopa County Attorney's Office, not just in these cases, but for years. And that is the first thing that I wanted to talk about today, is the fact that our office has been sounding the alarm on this egregious misconduct that has recently come to light. And by recently come to light, I mean has just been taken notice of by these institutions. But we've been sounding the alarm for years, not months, not since 2020, but for years. And starting all the way back in 2017, continuing into 2019, telling City Council and telling MCAO about the very officers who were involved in these cases, about their office's tendencies to politically prosecute their political opponents. City Council knew that this was happening and they did nothing. MCAO knew that this was happening and they did nothing. And now they respond by admitting that this conduct was atrocious and that steps have to be taken to address these grievances. But again, to highlight what Vidi said, this is what Black and Brown-led organizations have been yelling from the rooftops, have been telling this community for years, and this should be a sober reminder to listen to those organizations from now on, to listen to the voices of directly impacted individuals and to believe them. Since these institutions are finally recognizing their egregious misconduct, wanted to take some time to talk about their responses, which have been abysmal. First, there's this outrageous contrast between what our clients have experienced versus the penalties for law enforcement and for those involved. Our clients have had their lives completely destroyed and upended. Some were jailed for weeks or months at a time. Some were placed in deportation proceedings. Some were fired from their jobs. Some still are having difficulty securing employment or finding housing because these false felony charges come up on background checks. And all of them are deeply, deeply traumatized by being the victims of this high level of state violence. In contrast, none of the officers involved have to date been fired. And I want to say that again, none of the officers or prosecutors involved in the decision to falsely prosecute any of our clients to date have been fired. The chief got a 1-day suspension, which is a day off. Adele hasn't been disciplined at all. The officers involved at most got demoted, including the assistant chiefs who were involved in this decision. There should be greater consequences for those who grossly abuse their power and abdicate their public responsibilities. And more important, what has been left out of this conversation about accountability and responsibility from these organizations, and by and large, is the fact that accountability and responsibility doesn't end with how you discipline the officers involved. It also includes taking responsibility for the harms that you caused to these human beings. And that hasn't been a part of the conversation at all, is how to repair the harm that they have caused to our clients and how to repair the harm to the community. So with that being said, I will turn it over to our clients and those who have been most directly impacted by these egregious abuses.
All right, I'm the one to kick it off. My name is Kyrie Wilson. I was politically targeted and arrested on August 9th by Phoenix police. My experiences after that have been nonetheless very worrisome. I've had PTSD. I can't really drive how I need to, move around. It's been life-changing. My reaction towards the city and their steps as far as like giving Jerry Williams 1 day off, personally, I feel like that is disrespectful because my life didn't change for 1 day. My life has been changed completely up until now, and I still have a lot that I'm dealing with. I was the only protester that was convicted, and they knew that I was politically targeted to be convicted. I was going to lose a lot. I had a home, I had my car, I had my bills, and they wanted to keep me in there. And the only way to get me out was for me to take a plea deal. And I had to take a plea deal. Also, I was fighting COVID while I was in there. So there's that. My life was completely in danger. But that being said, again, I think with nobody being held accountable for their actions and the drastic changes that have happened to our lives, it's really disrespectful for not only us, but human beings. And it shows that there's no care for human life. And that should never be okay. So with that being said, when it comes down to holding people accountable and those in charge holding them accountable, the only way to hold these people accountable is to strip them of their power and remove them from their positions. They do not deserve it. If they've been able to do this for so long and be able to connect with other officers and be able to put this plan together and have no remorse or regret, they don't deserve this position. They're supposed to be about safety and protecting, correct? So if they're not about doing that, then they should be removed from their office and their position. That's what accountability would look like to me. It right there, nothing else. Remove them. Anybody next? Mercy.
Oh yeah, my name is Percy Christian, Percy Christin. I'm a protester and activist organizer within the community. Really echoing everything Kyrie was saying and everything Heather has said, as well as Viri, in terms of accountability, what we've been through, and the response or lack of by these institutions. The cases and what we went through as protesters is a clear abuse of power. We have police officers who have, went on the stand and lied. We have officers on the Brady list who were involved in our arrest and our attacks while we were out there. We have conspiracy from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office and Alistair Adele to try to charge us, with higher charges, with gang charges. I was someone who was looking at multiple felonies. I had several felonies that stemmed from, assault on a police officer to resisting arrest. All of those false charges, but charges that the Phoenix Police Department, along with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, were trying to, trump on me, find any way that they could to get charges to stick. Ultimately, they were able to try to get charges that ended up landing me in jail. I ended up having to spend 7 days in jail. And no thanks to the community, we were able to come together and the community saved me in that situation. And I'm very thankful for it. But the level of frustration, like Kyrie was mentioning, the level of trauma that I faced, I don't know how I'm going to be able to get it back. It's like 2020 was one of the wildest years of my entire life. I'm 28 years old, and it's taken a lot from me. So, in terms of mental health, I've had to go back to therapy. I'm somebody who has been advocating for my mental health personally, and I've been fighting for my mental health through my 20s. And these traumatic events have, most definitely put me in a darker place. So, hopefully we can work towards accountability and using this as an example, using our experiences as an example for, future protesters and future people who want to speak out and speak against these institutions who are abusing their power and who are continuing to abuse marginalized communities, Black and brown communities. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to, I believe, Masadi.
Hi, I'm Masadi. I was arrested 8/10, the next day after most of the people that were arrested for 8/9. It's been rough because I've watched all summer long just see specific people get targeted. And then all of a sudden, because I was a big rock for people, I started getting targeted. And it's to the point to where now I go places when I go out to Scottsdale, the police know exactly who I am and they they antagonize me, sexually harass me, and all types of stuff. I can go to Scottsdale and Scottsdale PD just comes after me. And they say, my son is terrified of the police because they showed up at my house to try and stop a protest because my son is just terrified. They snatched me out of my house in front of my kid. And watching my best friend, Kyrie Wilson, go through the shit that he had to go through, everything that Percy went through being specifically targeted, we're terrified to do anything. We're scared to leave our houses. We don't drive anywhere, we Uber because we're just scared. And the accountability that there is no accountability when it comes to the police. Jerry Williams got a day of rest. Let's be real. It was a day of rest. That's it. like Kyrie said, it was just very disrespectful. Sorry, I'm like, because it's a lot. Because I watch people I love the most not be the same person anymore. They're a lot stronger, but they're still not the same person. And I just think there should be more done. And I'm just gonna go ahead and pass it because I'm gonna lose it. Go
Thank you,
ahead,
Ms.
Sadie.
Who's next?
Sue is going next. Sue, you're not unmuted yet.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if Billy was hopping in. Hi, I'm Sue Ratnam. My full name is Suvarna Ratnam. That's Suvarna, last name Ratnan. I was arrested twice on August 23rd and on October 17th of 2020, and falsely charged with 7 felonies ranging from class 2 to class 6 felonies and some assorted misdemeanors. The second time I was arrested, I was targeted as an attempt to keep me in jail. My life has been permanently and irrevocably impacted by what has happened to me. Like a couple of other people have mentioned, I've post-traumatic stress disorder now. I actually had to be hospitalized. I was in inpatient psychiatric treatment during the beginning of this year, directly as a result of what happened to me. I was falsely charged as a member of a fictional gang that was fabricated by Phoenix PD in collaboration with MCAO in order to target protesters, to target activists in the area. Something that's nothing more than a hashtag, ACAB, all cops are bastards, was falsely reported by this department to be a street gang, and Phoenix PD manipulated their own system, omitting the actual gang enforcement unit from our investigation while they were investigating these charges because they knew they were false in order to target us. There's been no accountability whatsoever in these cases, and it's disgusting that Jerry Williams got a 1-day suspension where my entire life has been upended over this. I was held in jail for multiple weeks without bond, denied access to life-sustaining medical attention. I was unhoused between October 31st, which is the date that I was released from jail of last year, and mid-March of this year, around these false charges. I'm still in the gang database. I am afraid to leave my house to travel and to participate in daily life because I have been targeted, and that's still a risk in the future. I want to see all of these officers involved, especially McBride, who withheld exculpatory evidence and lied on the stand about these cases, fired. I want these officers' pensions taken, and I want none of these people to ever be in a position of power where they can harm others again. And want to see reparations for all of us impacted, because all of us have been permanently impacted, I think. And I think I'm going to pass it as well because I'm getting kind of emotional.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you so much. It's a really emotional time. We will now hear from Amy Caper. Amy, go ahead.
Everyone, good afternoon. My name is Amy Caper. Last name is spelled K-A-P-E-R. I wrote down what I'm going to say, so forgive me for looking away. So my name is Amy. I was arrested last year on October 17th, 2020. I'm one of the protesters who was charged with gang charges. I moved to Arizona from the Washington, D.C. area, actually, so was no stranger to protesting, marching in our nation's capital, civil rights, women's rights, pro-choice movement, all of those things. Last year, as I marched in downtown Phoenix in support of Black lives, I was tear gassed and gunned down by the Phoenix Police Department. A cop twice my size was on top of me, screaming to stop resisting as I lay with my hands behind my back. My head was smashed into the pavement. I was denied medical attention even after asking several times. As I went through the holding cell that night in Phoenix, I listened as officers repeatedly referred to me as Blondie instead of my actual name, and one male officer even pulled me aside alone in a cell and threatened my career. I listened as a female officer made fun of the spelling of one of my Latino comrades' last names and watched as Phoenix PD tried to force a Muslim woman in our group to remove her hijab. After my mugshot was plastered all over the internet, it was posted on an alt-right white supremacist website. I received multiple sexual assault and death threats. I had to delete my name from all of my social media accounts and had to completely get rid of my LinkedIn profile for work as someone called my job and reported me. Being charged as a gang member was completely unreal. Nothing could have prepared me for the charges that were brought against me and so many others. I felt like I was dreaming. I have a master's degree. I have a full-time job. I volunteer as much as I can. I am no gang member. I was in graduate school at the time and working full-time. I work for the government, so I regularly have to do background checks for work. I had to talk to my graduate advisor about potentially finishing my degree from prison. I had to tell my boss that I may be having to quit so I could serve out 3 years in prison. It was humiliating and horrific. Today, as a directly impacted protester and community member, I am in solidarity with the demands for accountability from the Phoenix Police Department and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. I feel that we are all owed reparations for the harm caused by Phoenix PD and their actions. I had to spend thousands of dollars out of pocket to retain a lawyer, as well as help out some other protesters pay their legal fees. I had to buy a new cell phone because the Phoenix PD kept mine for months for evidence. When I was released from jail the next day after being arrested, I was dumped in the middle of downtown Phoenix with no phone and no way to get home or to contact anyone. For further accountability, we need to fire these lying cops and take their pensions. What they did to us is beyond disturbing. I still have PTSD and I have nightmares almost every night. Please listen to our stories and understand how this has hurt so many of us here in Phoenix. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. We'll now hear from Maxima Guerrero. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Maxima Guerrero, M-A-X-I-M-A, G-U-E-R-R-E-R-O. I am a community organizer, DACA recipient, and last summer I was one of the victims of police violence directly targeted during the first mass arrest at the end of May, while being a legal observer during a BLM protest. As a DACA recipient, a biometrics check is run every 2 years to renew your DACA. If you run my fingerprints today, an arrest for a felony will show up. This happened this year during my renewal and will continue to happen every time I try to renew. I should have never been arrested. The Phoenix Police Department, the chief, the officers, every person in the department is negligent about the long-term implications from the mass arrests that they made last summer. Not to mention the harm of chemical weapons, rubber bullets, unnecessary violence towards hundreds of other people exercising their First Amendment rights. It got to a point where they seemed as if they were releasing these weapons for fun. And at the end, we have seen the use of these weapons increasing throughout many years. The police lied, fabricated charges on the spot, not verifying what to write on the arresting report and immediately labeling a felony. Within the same week of my arrest, it was released by the department that the proper charge for the arrest should have been a misdemeanor. As the mass arrests increased during the summer, we have seen and heard today that the fabricated charges only increase in harm to those of us being arrested. If my community had not fought for my immediate release, I would have been in a detention center and on the verge of deportation hearing these news. Hundreds of us could have faced years in prison, detention centers, and deported. One person, Jesus, actually was, and his girlfriend at the time suffered a miscarriage from the impacts of the incident. His family was torn apart. During my initial appearance, there was no probable cause for my arrest, yet I was still picked up by ICE. It was in the cell of 4th Avenue, the 4th Avenue jail, the cell of the ICE offices, that I came to the verge of planning how I would have to survive if I had been deported. Once again, Phoenix is on the spotlight for human rights abuses and corruption. The recent happenings with the DOJ, the paid suspension for the police chief, the demotion of these positions do not erase the arrest that shows up when you run our fingerprints. Don't erase the trauma and the impact that everyone who faced gang charges and was politically prosecuted and targeted, and everything we still have to go through because of it. Doesn't erase the trauma that our families went through and continue to go through. The leadership of these agencies have failed us over the past years and continue to fail today. If we look back, we can clearly see the trajectory of this department and where and how it has landed us to today. Not because we did not speak up or have advocated against it, we clearly have for many, many years. And we've been exposing these abuses of power, but rather because all of these agencies are fabricated together, collaborate, and are intertwined in many agreements and contracts that block police accountability. We are here today to ask for that accountability, for the firing and resignation of many of these people in power. And we can only hope that we are not able to be in the situation again. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxima. Now we'll pass it over to Billy Murphy, who's a renowned civil rights attorney from Murphy, Falcon and Falcon.
Thank you. There are still people out there who don't believe that serious police misconduct infects communities of color, either because it is not present in their communities, or because they dismiss what Black and brown people say about it, or because they hear nothing about it on their favorite news network. This too must change. Please read the 2 Ballard Spahr reports commissioned by the city of Phoenix. Please read the retired Judge Stanley's report commissioned by Maricopa County Attorney Adele, because these reports reveal serious misconduct that no longer can be swept under a rock or a rug. And once you read these reports, you will understand what Black Lives Matter and other organizations have been saying. Mass liberation and power in action have been literally yelling to the rooftops for ordinary citizens like you to respond, to make your voices be heard, that this is totally unacceptable behavior. And it must be fairly compensated because they can't get away with this. And there are people who ought to be fired. The high-ranking people in the police department who participated in this conspiracy to miscarry justice should be fired, not demoted. The police commissioner should be fired, not given a one-day vacation. And those people in the Maricopa County Attorney's Office who are guilty of misconduct should also be fired, not just disciplined. These events must result in real accountability, because the citizens want justice by fair and equitable processes that they're not getting now.
Thank you. We will now be hearing from Lola Nsengu, who is the Executive Director of Mass Liberation Arizona.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for sharing such intense stories. You heard from community today, you heard our demands. We should not have to go these lengths. We are people, we are community. This is not our job to tell the city how to keep us safe. It is not our job, but yet this is the only way that we do keep our people safe. We shouldn't have to beg the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee or the full City Council to put these issues on their agendas We literally had to do that for nearly a year. And when we begged them, they refused repeatedly. We had to do citizens petitions just to get the city to listen. And that was no small feat. It was a long and drawn out process that barely passed, barely. And what you see now is a very small portion of the demands that we had as a community even being met. One of those was for an independent investigation. And during the process of this independent investigation, the city and the police department refused to participate in a meaningful way. They literally refused to take interviews. They refused to produce evidence. And this report tells us that the only way to even get meaningful answers is for the law to intervene and for a law enforcement agency to actually compel the police and the city to participate in the investigation that they ordered. What does that tell us about their intentions? What does that tell us about what they're hiding? And even when they were hiding, they still found all of these egregious issues that were laid out in these two reports. And again, those reports told us what we already know. They told us what we told city council time in and time out. And we went to the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee. That is what their job is to talk about issues surrounding police. And literally every single time, and we showed up month after month at every single meeting. And they literally responded by silencing us. They literally responded by saying, we cannot get this on the agenda. So what does this tell us? When a report like this produces all of this information and our city council refuses to hear it from the people, what does that tell us? All these months later, Ballard Spahr told us what we already knew. And the city's answer was to give Chief Jerry Williams a 1-day suspension and to do some reassignments. And as PLF told us at the beginning of this call, literally no cop has been fired as a result of this. In our citizen petitions, we demanded firings, we demanded accountability, and we demanded reparations. And we are here today to say the same exact thing. Everybody on this call is in solidarity that we need to see accountability, and accountability amounts to firing. There are hundreds of people, if not thousands of people who were harmed by just the protests. And there's tens of thousands of people harmed by the PPD, people who've lost their lives, people whose lives have been destroyed. We've heard stories of that. There are people who were in jail and got COVID-19, held without bond, have convictions because there was no other way to get out of jail. They've destroyed people's lives. There are people who have been deported. We heard that today. These are unacceptable outcomes, and these police need to be held accountable. And at the very least, they need to be fired. We need a new MOU. It is the MOU, the agreement between the city and PLE, the police union, who uses the power of collective bargaining. They're not a union at all. They need to redo that entire MOU because it's that MOU that caused all of these folks to have to go this route for accountability. That MOU hides the evidence of police violence. That's what it's there to do. And we need to get rid of it. And instead, the city council, we trusted them to do the negotiations around the MOU. Now we need the people to be part of it. The city council is incompetent. They're cowards. They are terrified of plea. They cannot hold their violent police department accountable. They're scared to do it, but we're not. So we will handle it. We need a new MOU and the people need to negotiate that. And then very last, but not least, is we need reparations. Those police our police department has an inflated budget used to kill people. In fact, the subcommittee, the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee had a grant that they agreed to allow the police to get to compensate themselves for riots that happened over the summer that we've already seen never happen. There's not a legitimate conviction of riots, not that there's any such conviction would have ever been legitimate. There is no evidence of riots, and yet they were able to get hundreds of thousands of dollars for that. This money needs to go to the people on this call. That is the beginning of reparations, and that's just the start. They have been lying, they have been stealing from the public, and they've been trying to kill people, and they've actively killed people. No more, no more, no more. The message today to the city, we are not going away. You can continue to be cowards, or you can join our demands, which are, again, the bare minimum for the harms that you have enabled, you have caused. That is the message to you at the city. Make no mistake, you can continue in your cowardice, but we will not go away. And if you do continue in your cowardice, we will hold you accountable too. Your seats are not guaranteed. And I hope that the DOJ is watching right now. And with that, we will pause and take questions from media.
Yep. Thank you, Lola. So you can continue to ask questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We all open up the questions that were originally asked. And I'll start with Josh Kelledy, who asked, what is the response to the MCAO commissioned outside review conducted by Ronald Steinley that found Alistair Dell did not have a full and complete picture of the case prior to February 2021, and that she took swift and decisive corrective action after she was fully briefed in February 2021? And I'm going to ask Heather if you could answer that on camera now.
Yeah, thank you very much. First, I think it's important to point out the deficiencies in the report that was authored about MCAO's conduct, starting with the fact that very few employees at MCAO were even interviewed or even cooperated with this investigation. MCAO points out that Judge Steinley interviewed approximately 3 employees. And so there's already a lot that's missing. We know there's a lot that's missing from this investigation. And that's primarily because many MCAO employees refuse to participate in it. And there are many interviews that are lacking. So I wanted to highlight that first of all. Second of all is this idea that Adele didn't know about these charges. First, it's alleged that Adele discussed these charges with April Sponsel way back in October. Second, Judge Steinley's report indicates that these charges were being discussed at between PPD and MCAO as early as September. Second, Judge Steinley's report suggests that, or third, Judge Steinley's report suggests that Adele was briefed in the hospital. And finally, we know that she responded to media inquiries about these charges in November. So she was aware that protesters were being charged as gang members as early as the beginning of November, and did nothing to take corrective action, and didn't start reviewing these cases until February, coincidentally after ABC 15 started airing its politically charged series. Finally, it strains credulity to believe that her entire executive team knew about and was briefed on these cases and that she didn't know. That is our response.
Thank you, Heather. Lola, would you like to answer? Would anyone else who is working on the MCAO that would like to answer?
I'll go. I want to second everything that Heather shared. It is an outright lie that Alistair Adele did not know about these protest cases, particularly the street gang charges, prior to February. We have some folks who've reached out to us from inside the jail. We have done some initial vetting, but inside a jail, there is a person who has said to us that they were charged, and we checked the court records, so it does exist. They were charged with a criminal street gang back in June by the First Responders Bureau, that they were charged with criminal street gang participation in June because they said Black Lives Matter during an arrest. Alistair Adele was not experiencing health issues at that time. Alistair Adele was our county attorney at that time. We're investigating that situation now, but it's absolutely looks credible, and that just is going to show another pattern of the way MCAO has shown up to politically target and prosecute people who they consider to be their political opponents. And the racism, the inherent racism within their system. I also think it's very important to note that there is a notice of claim coming out from one of the prosecutors who were involved in these street gang charges. In fact, the one who brought the charges, her name is on every one of the street gang cases, April Sponsel, who is saying that Alistair Adele allegedly knew the whole time. And so it's just very hard to believe. And then the complete and utter absence of accountability, the fact that they needed to be compelled to drop those charges, just goes to show, in my opinion, that there is no chance that Alistair Adele found these to be problematic charges at all. In fact, there was shadow investigations that were being conducted by so-called gang experts that were collateral to the actual above ground Steinle's report. They're denying it now, but there's a person who what is his name? Craig, somebody chime in. Craig, the former street gang police officer who was retired. He ends up questioning a protester without their lawyer present during what was supposed to be an information gathering from an informant, and then claimed to be there to protect April Sponsel in the process. This is a shadow investigation that happened. The same person was employed by MCAO prior, and I'm trying to remember his name. I'll drop it in the chat for the folks who need to know, but that is just another example of how MCAO did not want to be held accountable to these charges and was absolutely behaving in such a way that they were trying to conceal evidence rather than expose it.
Thank you, Lola. And I'm going to pass it over to Billy Murphy now to answer the same question about the MCAO's outside investigation.
Maricopa County Attorney Adele was quick to support the police misconduct as her first response. It was only later, after the press really dug into her and discovered, with the help of our lawsuit and from the citizens themselves and from the organizations you're hearing from today, that she changed her tune and commissioned a report by an outside law firm with no axe to grind. And so she doesn't get credit for being prompt. She gets credit for being late after supporting what the police did.
Thank you, Billy. I'm going to go over to the next question, which is from Justin Loom, which is directed for Suvarna or Sue. For Ms. Retnam, what was your initial reaction to Phoenix PD comparing ACAB to Bloods and Crips and other notorious gangs?
You're on mute.
Sorry, there we go. Can you see me?
Yes.
It's absurd, and it would be laughable to call ACAB, which is nothing more than an internet hashtag that's commonly used by those opposed to police brutality, a gang, if it weren't for the permanent physical, emotional, and financial harm and trauma sustained by those of us impacted and falsely labeled as gang members. That was my initial reaction to that.
Thank you, Sue. And then I'm going to ask Amy Caper if you could answer the question on, sorry, one second. If for any protesters who'd like to elaborate, what would you specifically like to see as discipline for Phoenix PD and Maricopa County attorney officials involved? What should happen to the chief of Phoenix PD?
I mean, she should be fired. She should lose her pension. They should all be fired. They should all lose their pension. There's no reason that those of us, many of us who were arrested, I know at least one person I was arrested with lost their job as a result of this. Why shouldn't they lose their jobs? Why should I have to potentially lose my security clearance at work because of what happened? This isn't fair. They should lose their jobs if that's the kind of stuff that their actions are going to cause for us as the impacted people. I say it's fair. It's all fair game. It's fair for them to lose their jobs and everything that they've worked for too, because so many of us lost that as a direct result of their actions.
Thank you, Amy.
Let me deal with that as well. I think that the so-called discipline that has been imposed on both the attorneys and the police officers in this case is laughable. This is not being taken seriously by either the police department or by the county attorney's office. And until the discipline is appropriate for the serious misconduct that we have here, nobody will be happy who's fair-minded. Nobody will be happy with it who wants justice. Nobody will be happy with it if we want to stop this kind of misconduct by imposing the kind of penalty on these wrongdoers that will warn everybody the next time that this conduct will be severely punished.
Thank you, Billy. Do any of the other folks who were the protesters, would you like to answer this question about what you'd like to see as discipline for Phoenix PD or the Maricopa County Attorney officials that were involved?
I'll piggyback off everything. I think as a collective, we are all here to say that what they did to us was wrong. And for them to be held accountable, they need to lose their jobs, lose their pensions, just like Amy said, but there also needs to be prison time involved. There needs to be prison time involved, so they need to understand, like, you can't do that. So just like Bill said, the next time where an officer feels like they're ready to abuse their sense of power, they won't. They'll think about the last officers that lost their jobs. So think about the last officer that lost their pension. They'll think about the last officer or police chief that lost their job and position and is now will hopefully soon be serving prison time for their wrong actions. That's it.
Thank you, Kyrie. The next question is from Justin Loam. Ed Zerker is asking, the city manager, Ed Zerker, is asking the Arizona Attorney General to investigate as well. Does anyone agree or have thoughts on that recommendation by the city? And I would ask if Lola or Heather specifically want to answer.
Before we do, Ria, could you restate the question?
Sure. Ed Zerker is asking the Arizona Attorney General to investigate as well. Does anyone agree or have thoughts on that recommendation by the city?
I'll defer to you, Heather.
Well, I was going to defer to y'all.
Looks like Steve might want to answer.
Yeah, I'd like to offer a brief piece of context on that, which is Ed Zerker initiated these investigations by hiring Ballard Spahr. Ballard Spahr was supposed to have completed these investigations, but the police department did not cooperate with them. The reason the city manager is now requesting another investigation by the Attorney General's office is because one of the conclusions of Ballard Spahr was that anyone without subpoena power would not get all the evidence that needed to be obtained to reach firm conclusions, which is really an indictment about this department. Ballard Spahr's report revealed something else, which is the city has a 90-day retention policy for emails. So any Attorney General investigation is going to be impaired by the city's 90-day destruction policy. This is an investigation that should have been done by the law firm that this same city manager hired and only was not done due to lack of cooperation from the police department. So irrespective of how one might feel about the necessity of the investigation, the propriety of the AG looking into the Phoenix Police Department, we have to remember the reason why it's even necessary, because the Phoenix Police Department did not cooperate with the investigation that this city's taxpayers funded in the first place.
Thank you, Steve. Would anyone else like to add anything?
Yes, the real issue here is whether the Justice Department shouldn't just do a civil investigation. It's whether they should do a criminal investigation. And I think all of us believe that in light of the inadequate response, woefully inadequate response by everybody concerned, that it's time for the FBI to get involved. It's time for the Justice Department to get involved. They're already involved in doing a criminal investigation of one of the people in this case, and it's time for them to broaden that investigation, given the findings of the Ballard Spahr report, the judge's report, etc. So there's no question that the threshold for asking for criminal investigation from the Justice Department, which has no dog in this fight, is appropriate at this moment.
I'll also add that there was also already a response from Attorney General's office that said they don't want to investigate, that they're not going to look into this, right? And this is again because all of these departments are working together, colluding together, and protecting each other. this is a history that has been happening, right? This, Attorney General Ranovich is also endorsed by police unions, also, has been part of this protection. So all of this state is not going to hold itself accountable, and it has been clear as a response that they're not going to look into this. And so that's also, to that one, Ed Zerker and everyone in the city is trying to evade responsibility like they have been, and continue to pass this around to as many people as possible to have other people say no. They have the responsibility. They have to take immediate action. They have power to do things now. Zerker has the power to fire, the chief, and the chief to fire all of these people. And the council has the power to fire Ed Zerker. And so there's no more excuses in throwing this around for agencies that have been proven to protect each other, who have been proven to be just as racist as this department. They're not going to find anything else, and they don't want to, because that's how they function. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Yes, I'm that this is just another opportunity for the students to grade themselves. We've already seen, right? The community has said all of these things are happening. The attorneys, the brave investigative reporters, they've all covered all of this. The work has already been done. And the students grading themselves isn't going to get us any new outcome. At the end of the day, the only substantive thing we can do is to defund these police. There's no reason we should have a militarized police force that responds to people literally calling that same police force not to kill Black people. It is utterly ridiculous. And so to think now that potentially the Attorney General is going to be able to stop the police violence by producing another report. Reports don't save lives. Stopping police violence and stopping the actual police, because we already know inherent to policing is racism. No amount of implicit bias training, no amount of community outreach is going to rid people. You cannot train racism out of a system that was designed specifically on its actual fundamental history is through racism. It is policing has historically, it's been shown to have been a derivative of slave patrols. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. So you can continue to put other law enforcement agencies onto the case and have them tell us again what we already know. But unless it shows up as a substantive change, and that substantive change means no more people are dying, no more people are put in cages, then it's ceremonial, it's useless. We don't need it. And I also just want to second there's an entire conflict of interest to have entities like the DOJ. Yes, it's nice that they're going to tell us what we already know, but unless they can actually use the power that they have to actually reduce the power of these offices, there isn't for us any meaningful outcome. So you can have them here, we can watch them produce reports, but the thing that we need to recognize is there's harm in that too. There's harm in them coming and legitimizing, like what we've seen here, even in this report. These two reports that were released by the city, they show us what we already know, and they don't show us everything. So in many cases, we're seeing that by not speaking about some of these harms, they are legitimizing them. We cannot have another law enforcement agency get involved and refuse to hold them accountable, refuse to look at what's actually happening. So if we are in fact going to have investigations, the people, directly impacted people, have got to be part of it. I'm not calling myself, we're not calling for any more law enforcement agencies to be part of this process at this point, unless there's going to be substantive change and substantive outcomes, there is no more reason to do any more reports.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lola. We are now 5 minutes away from our closing time. If anyone has any other questions, you can feel free to ask them now, and we can try to get to them before we close. And you can also put them in the chat. Okay, I think we are done then. And please note, Viri just put this in the chat. You can read our full list of demands, a list of joint demands from Poder in Action and Mass Liberation Arizona, addressed to the city of Phoenix, with the link that Viri has put in. And yes, we will be able to share the link to the Zoom recording. You can also get it on Facebook, on our Facebook page. Yeah. And all right, I see a question. Okay, someone from Facebook asked, what can the community do to support the police accountability movement? I'll say it again. What can the community do to support the police accountability movement?
The community can come out in force, and the community can do what the police here unsuccessfully tried to do, and that is stop regular citizens from letting their voices be heard by demonstrations, marches, meetings with city officials, intervention. There's a whole lot that they can do. And they can also join these organizations that you've heard so much about today, and reach out and find out from them how they can be useful in changing what is going on, permanently changing what is going on. And by the way, there was a remark made that I want to sign on to by Lola, and that is that everything about policing today is the result of 400 years of the police actively participating as their job description in the oppression of Black people who were stolen from Africa and put in bondage under absolutely barbaric conditions. So that's the origination of the police power towards Blacks and towards Browns and towards Asians. And so whenever there were discriminatory laws that had to be enforced, who do you think enforced them? The police. Whenever there was any effort to gain our freedom, who do you think stopped it? Among others, the police. And this has been true on up to the present time. So that's 400 years of police abuse against communities of color, Black, Brown, and Asian. There's no denying that. The problem, one of the problems here is that the public has never received a decent public education about the history of how Blacks, Browns, and Asians and others, women as well, have been mistreated in our society deliberately by white male supremacists. And until that education that we are supposed to get about the real history of what has happened in America is given to everybody, Black and white, required to be a part of the curriculum, Black and white, then this history that is absolutely revealing will still be a secret to the overwhelming majority of the people of Arizona. And I defy anybody to say that it is wrong to teach the truth about what happened to us meaning Blacks, Browns, Asian, and women. When we learn the truth, we'll be more receptive to the kinds of things that are being said today. As I said earlier, if you don't know the history, you're doomed to repeat it. If you don't know what really happened, your opinions about what's going on today have no force or effect. They've got to be informed. You've got to become educated about all of this. And we're happy to provide that education.
Thank you, Billy. I'm also going to pass it to Bidi to talk about what we're doing locally here in Phoenix to hold police accountable, and she can close us off.
Yeah, thank you for that, Billy and Lola, for bringing that and centering in that, right? There's different levels that you can get involved and get plugged in, and there's different levels that we have to take action at the individual level, collectively and systemically, right? Just to name. So individually, get informed, get educated. If you can do anything else, read, follow podcasts, just get informed and get into the history and like understand that. So individually, you can do that. Collectively, right, follow the pages. I know that, someone's gonna drop the pages of organizations that have been fighting police violence, that have been holding police accountable. Follow that, and then there's constantly calls to action. There's constantly moments that you can take action, from literally 30 seconds to send an email, write a letter, to showing up and using your voice, to showing up and creating space for people impacted to make sure that their voices are heard and amplifying that. And so follow us. There's going to be information there, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and get plugged in with the organizations to take action, right? Council's going to be having a meeting next week, a special meeting to talk supposedly about this report. And we know that that is another excuse because they don't want us to show up at the regular meetings. They're creating these other spaces to continue to try to ignore. And so just stay tuned for calls to action around how we're going to continue to show up and disrupt the violence, not only from the Phoenix police, but from the city and the city council, right? Because all of it is connected and they're all complicit in protecting each other.
Thank you, Riri. And I'll say this as a close to talk about the work we're doing at Mass Liberation Arizona. It was community power that caused these reports to actually even, occur, right? These investigations to occur. It was people in the Phoenix metro area coming to council meetings, little subcommittee meetings every week, constantly in every single public comment section, telling people to, telling city council, telling Ed Zerker, telling Jerry Williams, telling the assistant chiefs of police that this was unacceptable, that they had to do something, that we won't stand for it. And that perseverance led to this. It's not the city council members asking for the report. They were literally forced to by community power. So, continue to follow, like Riri said, our social media in this digital age, right? We have to do a lot of these things digitally, right? So just follow what we can do on the local level, on the county level, or on the state level. We weren't, our partners, BLM Phoenix Metro, couldn't be here today, but please follow them as well. They were hugely impacted by these political prosecutions. Their Black femme leadership was directly impacted by these political prosecutions. They were targeted, surveilled. And even though we talked a lot about Phoenix PD today, please don't forget that the Maricopa County Attorney's Office played a huge role in these harms. They need to be implicated in this. Alistair Adele needs to be the face of this. And so we continue to call for her resignation. Either she resigns or we will recall her. And, just in general, please use your power and privilege and voice to center directly impacted people. The folks that we had today who shared their stories, who had to put themselves in such a vulnerable position to share these stories just to prove what they know is true, what they witness. Please put them, first when you think about what you want to do to hold, again, this carceral system accountable. And MassLib is a Black abolitionist directly impacted led organization. So we continue to always center Black directly impacted people, and we need all the solidarity we can get. So yeah, please join us in this fight. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm just grateful to be a part of this. I think it's wonderful what all of you are doing. And I believe that ultimately there's going to be more justice at the end of this rainbow. We've just got to keep fighting, and we've got to keep doing all the work all the time. That's what it takes. We can't slack. We can't hold back. We've got to press forward at 150 miles an hour. And actually, the more you think about it, it should be 1,000 miles an hour. It should be supersonic. Again, I want to thank everybody who participated today and for your participation throughout the struggle. It is very inspiring, and it's part of the reason that we came to Phoenix.
Thank you so much, Billy. We're really grateful to have you here with us to do this historic fight. And thank you everyone for participating as a speaker. Thank you for sharing your stories with us, and we will see you next time.